Hello folks, and welcome back to another episode of GGS2 Case 5. So, we have discovered who actually killed Tobias Gregson, but I don't think Asougi's quite satisfied with this verdict at the moment, even though we've finished it. It seems like things are done, but I have a feeling no. It's too soon, I think, for that.
The true identity of the Grim Reaper who's made the Supreme Court is dead. The other figure the Japanese man mentioned as having orchestrated the assassin exchange. There are still these few mysteries which remain unsolved. However, we can consider a conclusion to have been reached on the crimes in which he has been charged in this trial.
I would like to request that those remaining mysteries be pursued. As a prosecutor.
Very well. Allow me to first hand down a verdict for this trial. The defendant, Baroque Van Zieks, is...
Yep, there it is. It's not over.
I'd like to request that you hold off on that verdict, Your Honor.
Prosecutor Asougi.
The defendant's innocence still hasn't been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. Therefore, handing down a verdict at this point will be premature. That's the prosecutor's claim.
What? But Jikoku Seshiro has already confessed to the murder.
Even so, Baroque Van Zieks has committed a crime for which he must be judged.
It would seem that the court ought to hear your claim, Prosecutor Asougi.
Jikoku Seshiro did indeed murder Detective Gregson. However, that was because he was coerced into cooperating with a certain plot. A ruthless murder plot, in the form of an assassin exchange between England and Japan.
You're right, it was, but...
Then who was the one who coerced Jikoku Seshiro? The victim believed that he'd been given a mission for the Grim Reaper and headed for France, and was then murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange, the person who was able to give such orders, was the Grim Reaper himself. That's already been made clear.
That's true. We can indeed assume that.
The prosecution would like to formally indict the defendant, Baroque Van Zieks, as the Grim Reaper of Old Bailey, and the prosecution will proceed to prove it and charge him with that crime.
What? Asougi!
Order! 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 The Grim Reaper of Old Bailey. But how on earth do you intend to prove such a thing?
Scotland Yard is already conducting a thorough investigation on Lord Van Zieks. As such, there must not have been any evidence found to indicate that he's the Grim Reaper.
However, the situation has now changed.
What do you mean?
We've determined that the Grim Reaper performed a transaction with Jikoku in the form of this assassin exchange. We can now pursue the matter of his identity from that angle. That is the prosecution's theory.
Shocking. To think you would be willing to go that far in order to make me a criminal.
You have committed an unforgivable crime, Lord Baroque Van Zieks. I will have you prosecuted for it, at any cost, no matter what I must do.
Asougi Kazuma, is this the meaning behind your silence before? He's intending to have Lord Van Zieks charged for what he did 10 years ago.
Very well. Though it is a highly irregular situation, the court shall provide the prosecution an opportunity to present further proof. Proof regarding the defendant, the so-called Grim Reaper and the Assassin Exchange.
Allow me to express my respect for the court's wise judgment.
I hereby declare that the court will now transition into a secondary trial.
Round 2. Good lord. As imprudent as it was of me to evade the accusation that I'm the Grim Reaper with a sip from the Lord's chalice, I hope you will look upon my act with some leniency. Lord Van Zieks! It was 10 years ago that I started being known as the Grim Reaper. I had previously resigned myself to the title and simply accepted it, but I would like to be permitted to testify about it in my own words, right here, right now.
I wouldn't have it any other way. I was hoping you'd say that, Lord Baroque Van Zieks. The prosecution will start building its case on this matter by requesting the defendant's testimony. Regarding the prosecution's accusation that the defendant is the Grim Reaper.
What is the defense's opinion?
Allowing the defendant to testify could end up being incredibly dangerous for us. Besides, Kazuma-sama is currently blinded from logic by his emotions. You're right, Asougi isn't himself right now. But we're aware of it, and I've resolved to face him head-on even in this state until the very end, both as a defense attorney and as his friend. Understood. The defense has no objections.
Very well. In that case, the court asks that the defendant testify about himself, the Grim Reaper, and the Assassin Exchange deal.
As you wish. We're walking into a trap. The defendant and the defense. This is a trap. The Grim Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I've never killed anyone, nor have I ever ordered an assassination. I've been investigating the Grim Reaper for many years, and that's when my attention fell on the detective. That's how I came to discover his body at the crime scene on Fresno Street that day. But there isn't a single point of contact linking me to Detective Gregson and Dr. Watson. Therefore, I couldn't possibly have any reason to plot this assassin exchange nonsense. I think we can connect you to the case 10 years ago. Watson and Gregson were involved in that, right? Yes.
So you intend to deny the prosecution's accusation? regarding both the Grim Reaper and the Assassin Exchange.
I acknowledge that I'm known as the Grim Reaper of Old Bailey. However, there's no truth to that, and I'm the only one who can attest to that for certain.
The prosecution naturally does not accept that testimony as the truth. Naruhodō Ryūnosuke.
Yes?
Why is it that you're standing behind the defense's bench right now?
In order to reveal the truth behind all of this.
Even if the result is that your client's guilt is proven?
There's something I've learned after standing in all these trials. And that's that you can't hide the truth. At some point, it always ends up peering out. So, all I can do is side with my client and look for the truth.
Don't forget those words.
Now then, the defense will conduct its cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. I understand exactly what you're thinking right now, Asougi. Right now, you honestly believe that there's a contradiction somewhere in this testimony. I'm sorry, Baroque, but I may have to look into that. There probably is one, definitely. So, here we go. We're looking at the fourth statement. Fourth statement in question about contact linking him to Detective Gregson and Watson. This one, I believe. Yes. But you've had plenty of contact with Detective Gregson, haven't you? Of course. He's a comrade whom I've solved cases with. As he's also my senior in life, I've learned various things from him as well. Really? Like, what kind of things? Such as which shops offer the best fish and chips, and the like. Really? I feel like he really had to force himself to say that. On the other hand, Dr. Watson was a coroner, but that was a long time ago. I hear that he was invited to a university in the Great Japanese Empire several years ago, and has been teaching there. Yes, he was a forensic pathology professor at Yume Imperial University. Naturally, I have no connections with that place. And that means that I have no motive to go to all the effort of sending an assassin after him in Japan. True, that sounds logical, but there's something here that bothers me. Alright, so what we gotta do... Fish and chips. Back to this statement. We're going to present the Crimmett autopsy report as soon as I figure out which is on the 5th page. Thank God this thing tells me where it is. Because there's a lot of evidence!
This appears to be an autopsy report. And from 10 years ago. Belonging to Lord Klimt van Zieks.
What? Crimmett's autopsy report?
It looks like the defense doesn't intend to run from this.
Order! Order! Why are you bringing out a 10-year-old autopsy report at a time like this?
This autopsy report of the serial killer of the professor's final victim is the key that links Detective Gregson, Dr. Watson, and the defendant. Professor, why that name of all names?
I investigated all the court records remaining from that time. 10 years ago, autopsies were still considered desecration of the dead. Performing an autopsy on Lord Kremet Van Zeeks, an aristocrat, was unthinkable. However, the one who appealed strongly to the House of Lords and was able to make it happen was Detective Gregson. Apparently, the detective guaranteed that we'll definitely be able to find some decisive evidence by doing so.
And the one who was responsible for performing the autopsy was Dr. Watson. His signature is clearly written on the report. We ended up finding evidence as a result of the autopsy, just as the detective had said we would. It was a piece of evidence that ended up clinching Asougi Genshin's guilty verdict. He murdered my brother and ended up leaving evidence with him. Careful, Baroque.
That ended up being the clincher we needed in order to get the professor convicted. You avenged your brother by prosecuting him and managed an outstanding victory.
An outstanding victory, huh? I wonder if that was really the case.
What?
What if that decisive evidence had been fabricated? The detective, the coroner, and the prosecutor all joined forces to create it. And ensure that an innocent Japanese man will be executed for being a supposed serial killer.
What utter rubbish!
Now 10 years later, you developed a need to have that secret protected. So you saw that both the detective and the coroner who knew the truth were eternally silenced, didn't you? Using an assassin exchange between the Great British Empire and the Great Japanese Empire.
Order! Order!
10 years ago, my father was convicted of being a serial killer in this courthouse and was executed. However, that was a false conviction, and in order to prove that, I knew I had to come to this country, no matter the cost.
For the impropriety of raising my glass to the tenacity of the Japanese, I beg your indulgence. However, bringing personal feelings into the Supreme Court means that you are not worthy of being a prosecutor. You're one to talk, Baroque. Look what happened 10 years ago. Asougi, surely you must know. You could say that the trial 10 years ago was faulty, but if you don't have proof, then it's nothing but conjecture.
Incidentally, I do have proof.
What?
When I was on my way to France with that detective on October 31st, I posed as an assassin targeting Jigoku Seshiro's life. And that was all in order to learn the truth from him.
The truth.
And that's when the detective admitted to it outright. He admitted that there was a secret behind the autopsy 10 years ago.
A secret? I've never heard anything about that.
While we were waiting in Jigoku Seshiro's cabin for our target to return, that's when he seemed to realize my true aim.
I see. I never would have guessed that you were Asougi's son. Do you intend to kill me now?
I may, depending on what your reply is. What I want to know is just what happened 10 years ago. The truth and nothing more.
Let me start by making one thing clear. I still believe that your father was the professor even now. But we lacked sufficient evidence 10 years ago to prove that.
So, does that mean you admit it? That there was forged evidence used in my dad's trial?
It was all for the sake of the Great British Empire. All I did was act as I had been ordered to.
Ordered? Tell me, what did you do?
I have no intention of telling you.
Even if it means your death?
That's right. Even if it means my death. And that's when the tip of karma was broken off? Kazuma-sama.
The fabrication that occurred during Lord Kermit Van Zeke's autopsy was carried out by Detective Gregson, who was in charge of the investigation, and Dr. Watson, who was in charge of the autopsy. There is only one person who could have given them the order to perform it. And that's the prosecutor in charge of directing the investigation, Baroque Van Zeeks, and him alone.
In other words, the defendant was the very person who possessed a reason to formulate the assassin exchange plot.
Precisely. And we've already proven that the one who ordered the assassin exchange deal was the Grim Reaper himself. Therefore, the Grim Reaper's true identity couldn't possibly be anyone other than the defendant, Baroque Van Zeeks.
Asougi Kazuma.
What?
Are you absolutely certain of what you just said? Did Gregson really fabricate evidence 10 years ago?
I asked him myself, and he undeniably admitted it.
And now he's dead, so I'm not sure we can use this as valid evidence at this point. I'm not saying he's wrong, it's a testimony from someone that you can't get to prove that he said it now, because he's dead. In that case, I now know the name of the Grim Reaper.
What?
Lord Van Zeeks. I never gave any such orders. I know that myself. In which case, there's only one other person who could possibly have done it. Lord Baroque Van Zeeks isn't the Grim Reaper. He's right. There's just one other person it could be. Oh, can we finally do it? Can we finally do it? I feel like I figured it out now.
Naruhodō.
I had a feeling that about this person somewhere inside of me. The true name of the Grim Reaper of Old Bailey is Heart Vortex. The name of the only person who could have ordered forgery in the autopsy and the assassination exchange deal is Heart Vortex. It was you!
What? Lord Vortex?
The defendant was indeed the prosecutor in charge of the professor's trial 10 years ago. However, that was only the case after his brother, Lord Crimmet, was murdered.
Was that claim of yours just now simply the worst joke to ever go down in British legal history?
Well, Lord Van Zeeks, 10 years ago, I was a newly minted prosecutor. I'd lost my brother, and burning with hatred, I begged to be made the prosecutor in charge instead. At the time, the one who managed the whole investigation and had the autopsy performed after convincing the House of Lords, then provided me with the autopsy report and evidence, was you. Oh shit. I mean, it was pretty obvious in real talk, I'm sorry, but ever since, this trial started in general, Vortex just became slowly more and more suspicious. And it was just waiting until the right moment to call him out. I'd always considered you to be my benefactor. However, it would seem that was all a huge misunderstanding on my part. The strongest force 10 years ago, capable of mobilizing detectives and coroners, is also the one who mobilized Jikoku Seshiro from the other side of the ocean 10 years later. Lord Vortex, if we assume that you're the Grim Reaper, it would explain everything. Come now, let us hear your response, Lord Vortex. This is not some joke that will go down in British legal history. This is an indictment made by the resolved defense.
I have no need to respond to that. An indictment, you say? Don't make me laugh. The defense attorney's statement just now was nothing but a wild fantasy and utter nonsense.
What do you mean?
You say that I forged details of Lord Klimt Van Zeek's autopsy? That claim right there is false.
But Detective Gregson admitted it to me.
I'm sorry, Asougi, come on, you know how law works. That's just not gonna cut it, unfortunately.
And where's your evidence to prove that?
What?
Gregson is no more. Do you propose we have his spirit testify?
I mean, there might be spirit mediums around back then, right?
Well...
I don't know how things work in that insignificant little oriental country of yours, but here in the Great British Empire, the only thing that matters is evidence. I have no intention of entertaining your baseless lies.
Whoa!
Order! 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 Now that Detective Gregson has been murdered and Dr. Watson is also gone, there is no longer anyone who can testify about what occurred 10 years ago.
And that right there was the aim of the assassin exchange, wasn't it?
The Supreme Court is not the place to reminisce about cases that were solved 10 years ago. I completely reject the accusations made by the prosecution and the defense. I trust there are no objections.
Asougi. One could say that everything he's lived for has been leading up to this moment. In order to pursue the truth of what happened 10 years ago. I wonder, is there really no one left? No one who could testify regarding Lord Crimit Van Ziek's autopsy. There is no one? There is someone. Oh heck, we have somebody! And his name is Mikotoba. He formulated and enacted a plan in order to erase every witness. He even silenced Professor Watson, who had gone to Japan, by sending an assassin. Can't ask Dr. Sith without going through Vortex either. But there's still hope. We're going a little over, but we're gonna get to that point at least. There's still one person left. One witness who can provide accurate testimony regarding that autopsy.
Ridiculous. There's no way such a person exists.
Naruhodō, who is it? Please tell me.
Asougi.
I'm begging you, allow this trial to continue.
I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it in order to find the truth. The one who can testify about Lord Crimit Van Ziek's autopsy is Mikotoba Yuujin. Let's go.
This is another Japanese person.
This is forensic pathology professor Mikotoba Yuujin. 16 years ago, he also visited London along with Jigoku Seshiro and Asougi Genshin in order to study abroad.
And just what do you claim that this man can testify about?
Mikotoba stood witness to the autopsy as the first assistant. And he was also the one who filled out the autopsy report based on the findings.
Ridiculous! The one who performed the autopsy was Dr. Watson.
The autopsy report is completed by the first attending assistant under the direction of the surgeon. Apparently, all the surgeon does is confirm the contents at the end and sign it. In other words, Mikotoba Yuujin saw the whole autopsy. Please summon Professor Mikotoba as a witness at once. We might be able to learn what happened 10 years ago.
The court rejects the defense's motion.
What? But Mikotoba is currently here in London and can be summoned in no time. He's probably in the gallery. It's no good. Lord Vortex doesn't intend to allow any witnesses to be called in order to protect himself.
Prosecutor Asougi, I believe I told you this earlier as well, but you will indict the defendant as the mastermind behind the Grim Reaper and the Assassin Exchange.
Yes.
So then, you will present evidence at once to prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I don't currently have any direct evidence. That's why we need a witness to.
The Professor incident is over. There are no clues left to be found there. Prosecutor Asougi, it would seem that you are standing there possessed by your father's spirit. All the facts that this court needs have already been made clear. The one who murdered Detective Gregson was the Japanese judge Jigoku Seshiro. We will leave the extenuating circumstances to be discovered via future investigation.
But then, the mastermind in this country will just hide everything again.
Are you referring to me? I will inform you of your punishment later. As for you, Prosecutor Asougi, you will surrender yourself as promised when this trial ends. Your pretend revenge is over now, son of Asougi. Now then, that concludes today's
Objection!
You've got to be fucking kidding me.
Holmes-san!
This is not a playground for novice detectives, Mr. Holmes. This trial is top secret. All outsiders will remove themselves at once.
Holmes-san became involved the moment he helped capture Jigoku Sessuro during his attempt to flee. We need to hear what he has to say. Lord Heart Vortex, you cannot end this trial now.
And why might that be?
Do try to remember. You declared it yourself, after all. That today is the day that we will hunt down the truth, so that not so much as a speck of doubt remains. Now tell me. You were so shocked by the accusation that you were the Grim Reaper that you forgot.
As I said, the truth has already been made clear.
It looks like everyone here in the courtroom are members of the country's judicial system. What do you think? Should we allow this trial to end here? What was it that brought you all here? Was it just to nod obediently to whatever your boss had to say?
Order! Order! Order!
Today, we're trying to open the door to the administration of justice of the dawning new century with this trial. To expel the darkness of these 10 long years that the Grim Reaper has controlled. And the only ones who can do that are those of us who are gathered here right now, folks.
The members of this gallery have no right to voice their opinions. Silence yourself at once!
That's true. The judge's ruling is absolute.
We simply should bring this trial to a close.
Are we really okay with that?
There's a force here concealing an invisible darkness.
Is there even a single person here who can say he hasn't sensed that?
The gallery.
Continue the trial! Summon that witness at once!
There are still things that have to be taken care of before arresting that Japanese prosecutor.
Your Honor, don't run away from your own declaration.
You've been accused. Please prove your own virtuosity.
The truth must be pursued to the end. That's what our country's judicial system exists for. What reliable voices.
Continue the trial!
Continue the trial! Testify! Testify!
Well, what say you, Your Honor? It seems that these are the voices of the Great British Administration of Justice. I think it would be quite difficult for you to crush them and run away.
The trial will now be temporarily suspended. I have no intention of running, nor do I have the need. Bailiff, issue a subpoena at once. Court will reconvene once the new witness has arrived.
Actually, there's no need to suspend the trial.
What?
Sherlock is just sassing all over him. Mikotoba just so happens to be a friend of mine, see? I brought him to the lobby. He may even be reliving his nostalgic memories of 10 years ago at this very moment.
What? Professor Mikotoba's here in the courthouse?
Hong-san, does this mean that you knew this would happen? I should think you'd know the answer to that better than anyone. I wouldn't have asked even if I knew. I wouldn't have asked if I knew, excuse me.
I appreciate your cooperation with the trial, Mr. Holmes. However, now that you've finished your role here, you will withdraw from the courtroom at once.
Yes, alright then. I'm actually quite busy myself. Mr. Naruhodō! Yes? You still have Iris's charm, don't you? Yes, of course. I brought it in my pocket again today. Iris sends her regards. If you run out of paths to pursue, tug on that ear just once. Alright.
In that case, the trial will now continue. Bailiff, escort the new witness into the courtroom.
The Grim Reaper's real identity is Lord Hard Vortex. Where on earth is this trial headed? It feels as though the darkness surrounding the court is endlessly deep. But it's okay. I'm going to confirm what's at the bottom of that darkness with my own eyes. Did it, kids. Is this to be continued? Please let it be continued. Please let me say I got it right. Did I get it right? To be continued, to be continued, to be continued. Yes! Thank God! Alright, cool. We are so over, but it's okay. I got to the to be continued. That scene was too good not to, I didn't want to stop in the middle of it. Too good. Too good. Did you see poor Asougi? I had myself muted so I was screaming offside because I didn't want to scream again in the middle of that. Because I did that already when I streamed it. So, okay, we're done here. We're way over. We're going to talk to Mikotoba in the next video, so I'll see you guys then.
Gregson is no more. Do you propose we have his spirit testify? Because that's fucking never happened in this court before.
Well, damn it, I knew I shouldn't have refused Future Trunks' offer to use the time machine to get a spirit medium.
The one who performed the one who doctored the autopsy was Watson. No,